Welcome to Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. Your Day Weather Podcast brought to you by Hot Springs County Travel and Tourism, reminding you that no matter the cold or the snow in Thermopolis, you can always find yourself in hot water. Go to thermopolis.com. It's going to be all about the Pacific. Short-term, medium-range term, and longer-range terms. We'll be talking about that in detail here in a moment. So we're not going to see a lot of sundogs in the Arctic cold. I forgot to include this sundog shot from South Dakota that came in during the Arctic outbreak. Another great sundog photo there. But with the Pacific replacing the Arctic air, we're going to be looking at more Pacific moisture and Pacific air moving all across the western and parts of the central United States. This means more wet weather coming for Washington, Oregon, Idaho, into northern California, and then into parts of the northern Great Basin states. And then we're going to, as we get into late Thursday and Friday, see a bit of an eastward push of the moisture. We'll show you that. And that could lead to a little bit of snow shower activity pushing out onto the plains. But then high pressure and mild Pacific air comes in for what is going to be a quiet weekend of weather. And that's going to extend into the first half of next week. So we're cut off from the Arctic. We're going to see the Pacific patterns dominate. So that means a continuation of these temperatures, which have been, well, much easier to endure. But a major shift in the weather pattern is coming late next week and next weekend. This is going to be especially true right around the 1st of February and then beyond, and we'll talk about that. Also, we'll have an El Nino update because El Nino is going to really be showing itself. It already kind of has here over the last week or so, and we're going to see it kind of dominate over the next several weeks, and we'll show you what that probably will mean. Satellite imagery this morning shows the next wave coming right up here into the Pacific Northwest, pushing moisture into there. You can see the swirl of clouds just off the coast. Another storm here north of Hawaii. Yesterday, I had mentioned the Pineapple Express. It's called the Pineapple Express because, well, moisture is coming from near Hawaii, where there's a lot of pineapples, and getting pushed this way. That's where the term comes from. It's the same term that people say is the atmospheric river, which is kind of a recent trend. It really is the same thing. It's just moisture being fed in by strong jet stream winds across the Pacific towards North America. So the Pacific getting very active and is going to really be throwing a lot at Western North America here over the next couple of weeks. So this is where we are today. What's left of the most recent system is weakening and heading east. This did produce a little bit of snow shower activity over the higher terrain late yesterday and last night. It's headed off to the east, will cause a lot of rain down here in the southern parts of the U.S. here over the next couple of days. Here's the next wave coming on in. Now this one's going to be a little bit stronger, and this is where it's going to be by Friday morning. So today, tomorrow morning, you can see it moves rather quickly on through with high pressure building in behind it. So these next couple of waves will produce this. Very wet weather in the Pacific Northwest. You can see getting into far northern and central California. Then as you go east, the moisture kind of peters out. But notice we're going to have some rain breakout here across parts of the southern plains. And you can see all the green here over parts of western Colorado, parts of western Wyoming, Utah, down into New Mexico here. So there's going to be a little bit of mountain snow. And if you look along the I-80 corridor, as we get into the next 48 hours, there's going to be a little bit of weather, not a lot, so travelers are going to want to keep that in mind. I-70 across Colorado as well, 15 in Utah, and I-80 here. Again, nothing that's really significant, but we are going to see a little bit of winter weather come in, and this is mainly going to be late Thursday and into Friday. Focusing in a little bit closer, you can see where parts of northern Utah, southern Wyoming, right along I-80, might have a brief period of a little bit of winter weather Thursday and into Friday. Elsewhere, though, and along in areas out to the east, the further east you go, the Pacific moisture basically just runs out. Then we go into this. Over the weekend, and this is for Tuesday, the 30th of January, a broad area of high pressure covers the west. Notice all of the gray and all of the blue. You're saying, well, where is the Arctic air? It's really warmed up. Well, there it is. The Arctic air is getting locked up again into the higher latitudes and probably will be there for a while. Poor Alaska. Alaska is really cold right now, and they're going to stay really cold. Look at these forecasted temperatures by Friday morning. They're already sub-zero. It's already bitterly cold up there, but it's going to stay along the North Slope and across most of Alaska, stretching back up here into northeast Russia, and then also into northwest Canada. So the Arctic air is not gone. It's basically it's reloading, but it's going to stay up there for quite a while. And the reason is the Pacific is really going to be dominating because of this very strong jet stream that I showed you yesterday. And this is classic El Nino, textbook, where we start to see the southern branch of the jet stream begin to develop again, where you kind of have the polar jet and then you have a southern jet going across this region of the Pacific and then into North America like this. And this, if you look at an idealized, now this isn't where the jet stream is all the time. What this is a very idealized graphic on sort of the differences of how storms move across the hemisphere when you're in these La Nina and El Nino patterns. The idealized general strong El Nino pattern, you have the jet stream taking more of a southerly route like this across the western and southern areas of the U.S., while in a La Nina, you tend to have it more pushed up to the north, which allows the jet stream to be more north. When you have the more northerly jet stream, you have more weather in the northern areas of the U.S. in terms of precipitation. The heavier precipitation during the El Nino phase is more biased to the south. That's kind of what we've seen this winter so far. Look what happens by the time we get to the end of next week. So this is towards Friday and Saturday of next week. We have a large low that's going to be building in across the Pacific Northwest and into California. Kind of a realignment. See the blue up here? The cold air is still locked up. Alaska is still very cold. We will have to deal with this later up here. This eventually is something we'll have to deal with, but at least for the next 2 weeks, we won't. The Pacific, because of this pattern right here, and this idealized graphic I'm showing you here is basically what's transpiring over the next couple of weeks. So this very large area of low pressure is likely going to meander very, very slowly eastward as we get into late next week, next weekend, and then into the following days of that first full week of February. So this will be a game changer in terms of bringing colder, wet weather further east. But the West Coast, the Southwest United States, you're in store for probably significant rounds of precipitation over a 2-week, maybe 3-week period. If this pattern unfolds like this, and then later into February, we'll have to deal with probably another shot of colder air. We'll just have to kind of see what transpires. But there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot going on. If we look at what we call the teleconnections, the Arctic Oscillation, which is kind of an indicator of where temperatures may go in the long term. If we were to look out here over the long term, anytime you go below that zero threshold is a colder signal. So if you look out further here, we go into a much colder signal as we get into later February, mid to late February, probably around or after Valentine's Day through the end of the month. We do see the tendency for some of that cold air to come south again. And the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, again, when it goes into the negative phase, which we see it going into the negative phase over the next couple of weeks, that's a stormy pattern for the western United States. So despite the fact there's not much going on now, there will be later. Quickly, let's give you an El Nino update. You can see it right here, those warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies right along the equator. Notice this patch of sea surface temperature is really getting a lot colder off the coast of South America. But on the other side of the Pacific, see this? This has been an area that's really warmed up here over the last few weeks. And so this warm patch, compared to this colder patch, that's going to kind of make things very active in the Pacific. And we're going to see changes eventually to where the El Nino is going to change its character. If we look at the change in sea surface temperature anomalies since from January 17th going back to just before Christmas. Notice there's a little bit of blue there. El Nino's warm waters have reached their peak. We've started to see some changes in sea surface temperature conditions here, but basically the point is this, and I'll show you here in the graphic, is that the El Nino, which is this big spike in sea surface temperatures right here along the equator, after the multi-year La Nina, has reached its peak. And if we look at the most recent update that came out late last week, this is where we are right now recently. Okay, so this is the current time frame we're in. See this solid green line? This is a combination of all the computer models listed here that try to predict the sea surface temperatures in the subtropical Pacific. Notice that green line continues to be a downward trend. We've reached its peak, but we're going to be in this zone right here to where El Nino is likely going to be impacting the weather in the western United States for a little bit longer before it weakens. And boy, does it ever weaken sharply. Look at that. You see those blue bars? Those blue bars are showing the possibility of a La Nina forming by summer. We'll have to see if that develops or not, but this El Nino is going to likely be a one-hit wonder. Have yourself a good Wednesday. We'll have more for you tomorrow.